Hello and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast. Hoping you guys are doing fantastic out there, getting it done both in and out of the gym. So it's been, I think, more than a week since my last drop, and basically just was a little bit busier promoting my last show that happened this past weekend. Always a good time, and finally, I wouldn't use the word finally, but it was a long season between promoting my 3 shows, going up and down the coast, head judging shows, all great stuff, attending a couple others, and now we're into the off season per se. Although I still have clients competing the rest of this month and even in December, which is kind of nutty, where back in the day, the off season was basically October was the end of shows, then pick things back up until March or April. But yeah, off season is really relative to your downtime between competitions. But as far as the bodybuilding schedule, man, things have changed over the years, and I mean it's all for the better. More options for you guys to hit the stage, and obviously if you are in a warmer climate area where you don't have snow or possible bad weather impending, bodybuilding is year round. So it's a beautiful thing. More options is always better. It's just sometimes it's weird because I still see, you see shows happening in January and February, and this past year I had clients do those shows where during the holidays was basically, all right, I'm chilling out, eating more, focusing on getting bigger and stronger. Anyway, that's my little synopsis and where we're at now, but on to the actual topic, and this one's going to be good. I'm going to do at least a 3 or 4 part series, and it's going to be titled Bodybuilding for Dummies. And the first part that I'm going to talk about today is weight training. And I'm going to be covering basics, giving you information that you can always follow upon, even if you are an advanced lifter or if you're thinking about competing. This series will be great for you because I'm going to lay out the bottom line, things that you need to focus on so you don't overthink, where it could be a nice platform for you to refer to. So the next one, I'll probably talk about nutrition and diet, and then obviously more of the contest prep type stuff, stage presentation. So we'll take it as it comes. But this one, I think, lays the groundwork of everything, is weight training. Now, if you go back and look at my podcast, I've talked about weight training in greater specifics. And a lot of the little things I'm going to talk about today, you can probably find out or see what I talked about in the past. But this is what I stand by 100%, no matter if you are just starting to work out with weights or if you've been weight training for 5, 8, 10 years. You can go back to this if you find yourself lost or maybe not having the progress that you're after. So weight training, that is the catalyst. That's what builds up the muscles that are necessary for us to look great on and off the stage. But it still can be confusing, and I blame social media. I blame sometimes science. I blame influencers, where we're inundated with so much information, and we're just always like hopping, like gym hopping, coach hopping, weight training, program hopping. And sometimes we just need to be like reined back in and to remind us, nope, I think you were probably doing it right the first time. Stop paying attention to everyone else. But I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what I think works best as far as how it can be applied to you specifically. So the first and foremost thing that you want to focus on is the type of weight training split that you're following. And I have a podcast totally dedicated to this, from beginners doing full bodies to more advanced people doing 4-day splits to push-pull legs to bro workouts to whatever. But I'm going to tell you that if you are stuck you still really want to treat each muscle group equally and not over confuse things. Unless you've been on stage multiple times and you have a muscle group that's really lagging, then you can pay greater attention to it. But I still believe the body will catch up eventually. So it's a matter of you focusing on each workout equally, treating each muscle group equally with the appropriate volume, and you're going to continue to grow. So to just talk about splits a little bit in greater detail, people will say, well, Joe, I only work out 2 times a week. If I want to compete, do I really need to do every day? No, you don't. I think a minimum of 3 times a week and you can grow. I think a little bit more will benefit you, yes, but it doesn't have to be every day. The sweet spot to me is 4 to 6 times a week of weight training. And it really depends on the split that you're following. Where if you are doing a push-pull leg, that to me is the most, not diversified, most flexible type of routine that you can follow, because if you only train 4 times a week and you're doing a push-pull legs, you're still repeating one body part per week, and I think that is great. If you're working 5-6 times a week, working out that often, and you're just doing a push-pull legs, well, you're basically hitting everything twice. And I think if you can recover from that, go for it. One of my favorite splits is a 4-day split. So it's basically push-pull legs, but a little bit spread out. And you can sometimes do more volume per workout because you have greater time to recover. And that you would train 5 to 6 times a week, where you repeat 1 or 2. But ultimately, whatever split that you follow, you want to stick with it. You got to give it time to see how your body responds instead of jumping ship every 2 weeks. Now, about a month ago, I went back to a push-pull legs. Now, and I'm sticking with it. And now I'm really enjoying it. At first, it was a little bit harder with recovery because I would train my lower body. So you work out 3 days in a row, take a day off, and then boom. So every 5th day was a lot for me to train lower body. But now I am adapted to it, and I feel good. The body's recovering, even at my age. And I'm doing that just because I'm trying something a little bit different from my 4-day split. And that is why also you got to give it some time, because you may not be adapting as quickly, but you got to do repetitions of the same thing for at least 3 or 4 weeks to really give it, your all, and to see if it's going to work for you instead of a week or 2. Now, when it comes to weight training, yeah, you got the split down. You're following your upper body, your push-pull legs, your 4-day. But I'm going to say a bro split, I would steer away from that, especially if you're a natural lifter. Because if you train each muscle group 1 time a week, there are outliers. And I know some guys who are great bodybuilders. They're natural. They can do it. But most likely they just have better genetics than the rest of us. But that's for another day. But I think some repetition of the muscle groups per week is really the best fit for us. So exercise selection, again, don't feel married to certain exercises. I think one of the issues, again, is that you think you need to do certain exercises because you were told to, or that's what bodybuilders have to do. I was guilty way back when, in my beginning coaching days, where I thought everyone had to squat, deadlift, do these exercises in this order because that's the way it has to be. Well, I've matured, and it's a combination of maturing through working with a variety of clients and even myself with my hip glute issues, where you could still make fantastic progress with a different combination of exercises than rather what you've been being told that you need to do. So if you can't back squat, that is fine. If you can't deadlift, that is fine. Where you want to pick exercises that fit your needs, that will help you continue on your path to get stronger and have that consistency in the gym that we're after. Now, are there better exercises than others? Yeah, I'm still steadfast on that. And if you wanted to email me or comment below and ask me my opinion on particular exercises or alternatives, please do so. So that is something that you need to get out of your head, because again, we're often influenced by others and what we think we should be doing. But I'm telling you, what's more important is the consistency of exercises that fit your physique, that fit your body, and focusing on getting stronger. And that's the third point that I'm going to talk about. How do we know if we're getting stronger? Well, before I dive into deeper about getting stronger, yes, finding the exercises that work for you, focusing on form and technique, taking your time with the exercise, because that also will teach you if that exercise is a good fit. If you can't do barbell bench press where you're not getting a good stretch, you're not feeling it in your chest, you're getting it more in your tris or your front delts, then that's not a good fit. Maybe you should go to dumbbells where you can focus on a stretch, your body can move in its natural angle. That's just one example. But once you figure that out for yourself, it's all about form, technique, and mind-muscle connection, chasing that pump. Because I believe if you're getting a pump on that particular muscle group that you're working, then the mind-muscle connection is actually happening for you. That's what we're looking for. And once you hit that, it's all about progressive overload. Now, progressive overload simply means doing more weight, more volume per exercise. So therefore, you're putting more stress on your muscles to grow. That's it. That's basically the equation that we're looking for. Now, you don't have to go to failure. Failure to me, I mean, it's great trying to go to failure, but do we ever really go to failure? Most likely not, because, it may get hard and you just may be quitting. If you're doing a curl and then all of a sudden you can't lift it more, is it just too hard because of the lactic acid, the pain, whatever? Maybe, but that's all right. It's okay to fall short a couple of reps of going to failure as long as you continue to add weight or repetitions. Because if you're using the same 20-pound dumbbell to do curls week in and week out, and you think you're going to failure but stopping at 10 or 12 reps, your body's going to adapt to it. And it's going to be less effective every time you do it. So instead, once you hit your 3 sets of 10 reps for 20-pound curls, go to 25 pounds. And even if you only get 7 or 8 reps for those 3 sets, that's okay, because you're giving it a greater stimulus. And then you want to focus on adding those repetitions up and try to get the 3 sets of 10 for 25-pound curls. That is a simplified version of progressive overload. And you would apply that to every single exercise. Now, I understand that sometimes if you're doing multiple exercises for a muscle group, okay, which I'm going to get into also in a minute, the second one or the third one, you may not be increasing. And that's because the first one you are. But when you still add up the total volume for those 3 exercises, you're still going up. So even maintaining, one arm cable curl after you do an incline dumbbell curl, that the cable curl is just holding steady, but the incline dumbbell curl is going up, that's all right. Because you're pre-fatiguing it even more, so it's going to be more of a challenge for the second and third exercises. So that, to me, is something that you really, really need to focus on for your weight training, no matter what level you're at. And how you do that, besides having the hyper focus and pushing yourself and not being afraid, you need to start tracking your workouts if you're not. Instead of going in there like, it's all on feel. I mean, every once in a while, I'll ask my clients, are you tracking? And most are, they'll use an app or pen and paper, or whatever, notebook. And then sometimes, no, I just go in, I kind of know, I remember. No, that's bullshit. Don't. You got to track. You got to give it the same attention as you would to your diet. So please, if you're not tracking your workouts, start tracking. Because when you track your workouts, workout to workout, you see what you did. Well, obviously, it's on paper or it's in your app. Next time you do it, you got to beat it. That is the hyper focus that you want to do workout to workout. You got to beat what you want to do. And that is something I've been doing ever since I'm a teenager. Now, yeah, you're going to hit plateaus and all that, and there are things that you can combat that. But again, we're trying to keep this bodybuilding and weight training for dummies right now without going into too crazy of a detail. So number of exercises per muscle group. Obviously, I talked about splits earlier in the podcast. It really depends. You know, if you're working out, doing a push-pull leg type of workout, for example, and you're doing your lower body workout, anywhere between 4 to 6 exercises covering all the lower body muscles are good. Now, what I do for the push-pull leg is that I'll have a quad dominant lower body day and I'll alternate it with a posterior chain lower body day. So the quad dominant, I still have the hack squats in there, but more of the exercises, yeah, they're hitting entire lower body, but there will be 2 lower body exercises that are more quad dominant and vice versa. When I do the posterior chain, I'll do my 5 or 6 exercises, but 2 of the exercises are more geared towards posterior chain. So this also helps with recovery. But if you're doing your pull workout with your back and your biceps, typically 3 or 4 exercises for your back, and I'll just limit myself to 2 for biceps. So, maybe I won't do that 4th exercise for back if I'm tired or short on time. So larger muscle groups, yeah, 3 exercises, smaller, 2. And what I mean by smaller is bicep, triceps, and shoulders. Unless you are spreading it out more and doing a 4-day split, then you can probably add a little bit more volume to the upper body just because you're spreading it out so you have greater recovery time. Now, one of the things that, gets in the way of weight training and progress is genetics, meaning that it can freak us out sometimes because you can see someone doing exactly what you're doing, but they're gaining more. Well, that's genetics, guys. That's predisposed, what they got from their parents. And that is one of the toughest pills to swallow when it comes to physique competitions. Seeing people with the same amount of muscle, same conditioning, but one may have greater genetics, and that's only because of their bone structure, more narrow waist, flaring lats, whatever the case may be. But finish this up, at least the topic of genetics, you cannot let that stop you. Because your goal is to improve yourself to whatever starting point, rather if it's from last week starting weight training, last year, or 10 years ago. The ultimate goal is for you to always focus on yourself because it's the consistency that can blast through those plateaus and even put you in a higher echelon of competing, because even if you don't have the greatest genetics, now you can't let it discourage you. Yes, at the high level of the pro shows, even for, the OCB and natural organizations, genetics does play a role. But I say fuck genetics. Screw it. Who cares? Because I'm guessing most of us that are listening are first-timers, beginners. Yeah, I'm sure that, and I appreciate you guys who are more experienced listening, but you still got time to improve your physique and do what is necessary by applying everything that I just mentioned and keep on grinding and getting it done both in and out of the gym. So don't focus on anyone else but yourself. That is like the biggest take-home point when it comes to competitions, doing what's necessary, for both with the diet, both for your posing, when your stage time, and everything else. I'm just trying to lay out sometimes the basics is what's really necessary. Years ago, I wrote a book and it never went to print. It was called Basic Weight Training and Beyond. That foundation that I'm talking about today, as far as weight training goes, is the foundation that's going to continue to break through those plateaus. That's going to bring up those weak muscle groups. Give it a shot. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you next time.